Tell me what's going on.
I've been blowing the U64, which is the injector power. And of course, the truck stops running. It'll say battery save mode, let you roll out to the side of the road in neutral and climb out, replace the fuse. Like I said, it lasts about 5 to 10 miles. It pops again. Even at the very onset, if I drive it 5 to 10 miles, I'll pop that fuse, replace it, drive another 5 to 10 miles, pop it again. And this morning I got online and I talked to Alan. Said, well, it's most likely the SRV, the short run valve. And I said, well, how do you test that? And he's like, well, you just have to unplug it and drive it. And if the fuse doesn't blow, then that's defective. And I'm like, well, you can't get to that valve. It's on the back of the intake manifold on the right side, and it is buried underneath there. You can't even see any cables. You can't see the valve. And the valve, if you look at the valve in the schematic, or in the diagram, its plug is downward facing. So it's below the map sensor underneath the manifold on the back, and then the power cable, even if you could reach it, you'd have to push it downward to disconnect it and then there's absolutely no room on the back of the 2014. The difference between my 11 and my 14, they pushed that motor way far back into a cove underneath the apron or by the windshield there, and it is no room. I would literally have to pull that manifold off even to check the SVR, and I'm just wondering, is there a way I can test it before I go through removing all of that hardware? I'm not getting any codes. That's the thing. The fuse pops. I don't get any codes, nothing. I even have an engine diagnostics or a power control module and deep dive diagnostics called Alpha OBD, and it's not showing any during the fact or any kind of failure of anything when that happens. I've got no information on it outside of pops the fuse, and that's it. We're done. And I thought it might be an injector. I thought it might be something of that nature, but if it runs, it really, how could it actually be an injector if it goes 5 to 10 miles? And I thought I had it beat. And I was driving back from going into town, and on the way back, it popped probably about the 8-mile mark on my trip.
Yeah, good question. So the only way that I know how to test it or check it without actually unplugging it would be to use a scan tool.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd basically, you use a bidirectional control, and you would basically just activate that short runner.
I think I can activate it, although I don't know. I may or may not be able to activate it because most of the scan tools I've seen, and I've been looking them up because I figured I'd just buy one to find out, because it'd be a lot easier than pulling the manifold off to test it, and still it's untested, is buy one, but none of them list the IMRC or the SRV as a component that they can actually randomly test. You can test a lot of things. You can test all of the occupancy restraint controller and the BCM and run it through its paces, but I did not see it on any of the other scan tools out there that you can literally scan the short runner solenoid valve. I don't know if that's even, it goes to ground on the engine block, but it's also got 3 other cables. Now I know the pink and white is the circuit that it's powered off of on 64. And I thought, well, if I could just isolate the wire going to it somewhere in the harness, I could cut the wire. And if it cut power to it, somewhere I could reach it easier. And if it suddenly stops blowing the fuse, then I would be in good shape. Of course, I'm going to get codes, but it would definitely be something of that nature. I just don't know where in the harness to find that pink white wire, and I don't want to cut it where it's actually, it looks like it's a branch circuit off of it powers if I cut power to that, I cut power to the injectors as well, because it goes to that and then it branches from that to the injector. So really kind of crazy, man. All this electronics hardware, I'm looking at the fuel injectors are powered, goes from that controller to the injectors. That's why if it is bad and it's causing the fuse to pop, it was to disable the fuel injectors. So
this is the stuff that we deal with every single day at the shop. Every day. So
every
here's the
day.
thing: you got two options. You can pull it apart and disconnect that short runner valve, unplug it, or you could just simply spend lots of time tracing down that wire that runs from that fuse over to that short runner valve,
Hmm.
and then the injectors. That's
Yeah.
it. So I would try to determine which one's going to be easier to do, and then do that.
Well, the fuse is the wire going to the fuse. Look at that circuit again. Luckily for me, I have the schematics. It's crazy, but it's better than not knowing where these wires go. And I'm just trying to make sure I understand where this is. Oh, I need to go to the fuel control system one. There we go. Fuel control system doesn't show
The circuit, correct?
what's that? I'm sorry. Say that again.
You already have all of the wiring diagrams for the circuit.
I have every diagram ever known to man on this vehicle. I have the fuel
Okay.
control system. I have the 100% all wiring and all of the pinouts for the C1, C2. And it's a nightmare because everything fused 64 is coming off the auto shutdown relay. The circuit that hot for that is coming off that relay, and I've replaced that relay with nothing. But it says it goes to an ASD control output on C1 on 74, 75, and 76, but it doesn't say what that control output is for on three different posts or on three different C1 connector pins, and they're all there, but it does not show on this schematic. It doesn't. It shows the feed going to all of the injectors, and then the injectors report back to the PCM on their individual control circuits, because I believe that it doesn't fire. It doesn't open the injector by applying power to it. It removes the ground at the PCM, and then when it needs to fire that injector, it just re-enables the ground.
Right.
And the fuel pressure sensor, but it doesn't show anything about because that wouldn't be fuel system, that'd be air control system. So I have to go back to the master schematic, which is, I don't know, you've probably seen these. They're pretty intense. And that just shows the same wiring, but the way it shows it branching off, if I cut that wire, I could definitely disable the fuel injectors and wouldn't solve any problem. I would have no power going anywhere in the circuit. So in order to unplug that, I would have to unplug that or trace that wire to that from the plug up to a point where it's not going into the main harness and back to the injectors. So obviously it has to be powered independently of the injectors. It would have to be. And this is crazy. Why would you do that? Why would you put this thing on the back of the motor? Every other truck I've ever worked on that was a Mopar solenoid is on the front of the motor on either side of the valve covers and stuff. It's just, this is crazy. Or the heads, excuse me. Pull this thing to determine whether or not, there's no way I can test it without pulling that off. There's no way I can do anything without disconnecting that.
I suppose if you could access the wire that goes to it, maybe a foot or 2 feet away from it, so
Right.
it's still past the injectors, and then just literally just cut that wire, I suppose.
If I could cut that wire, if I could find it, it's just, you know what, it's start unraveling looms and stuff of that nature, and how many other wires are going to go south on you while you're doing that. But I have no other codes. I'm running an engine in this vehicle that has the MDS disabled. Doesn't have it. It was built to be a non-MDS engine, and it runs great. It runs fine. It's just, and it gets great gas mileage, by even without MDS. But those are the codes I have because it's showing that it's been deactivated. It codes out and says, hey, the MDS has been deactivated, the solenoids, and it goes for each one of the MDS cylinders. But other than that, it runs great. It's 14 miles to the gallon, even with my lead foot. But this is killing me, man. This is driving me nuts. I have read out every wire going to every fuel injector. I've even tested the resistance on the fuel injectors and everything of that nature, and I just can't believe it would be this stupid sensor. I've never even heard of this thing before. And this is not, I have explicitly fleet Dodges, man, starting back in 2005. So they're all the newer Dodges, or supposedly better Dodges, and they were all Hemis. And like I said, I've never encountered this before. So let me trace out that pink and white wire. Let's hope they maintain the integrity of the color coding on the wiring diagram. And let me see if I can cut it I would not know if it's going to that plug or not because I can't even see it. You got any ideas? Can you get to it from the bottom? I don't really think.
I don't know off the top of my head. You have to look. Whatever's easiest, top or bottom, just go that route. And if you can't unplug it, then maybe you can just follow a harness, maybe a 12 inches, 24 inches away from that little valve, and just, if you can, just cut it, hopefully. Normally, that's not something we would do in the shop, but we would just get authorization from the customer to pull it apart. If they don't want to do it, we would just tell them to come pick it up.
But I don't mind pulling it apart and replacing that solenoid, but how do I know if I do that and it doesn't fix it, then I've done a whole bunch of stuff for nothing. It's not that big a deal.
Right.
I pull the intakes on the Pentastars all the time. Hey, got to do a tune-up. Take the intake manifold off first. Oh, oil change. Take the intake manifold off because it's not that hard. I just want to know if there's an easier way, and there is no.
The only way you'd have to find that wire about 24, 36 inches away from that valve and just cut it. That's the only other way to test it. And
to be honest with you, that kind of I'm very apprehensive of cutting a wire on that loom on this old of a truck.
Gotcha. So then pull it apart. Those are your options, my friend.
Every single connector on that is missing the red lock piece on it because they're so old and they're so brittle. And so I'm going to probably just pull the manifold off of it. It's not my daily driver right now because I can't. So I'm going to pull it in the shop and start pulling that manifold off. I got to finish a Dakota rack and pinion and figure out why all of the oxygen centers are reporting bad circuits. But I'm pretty sure it's a ground. So they all ground to the same spot. So anyway, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I figured that I had to just bite the bullet and pull this off and go through it. But it does make sense that it would be that sensor or that valve, that solenoid, because it's blowing that circuit. Because when I'm driving, it's adjusting airflow and mixture, so that thing's opening the runner and changing the airflow dynamics. So it would make sense that if it's not right or it's jamming up somewhere, unless there's something in the manifold causing that solenoid to jam up. But I can always apply 12 volts to it when it's out and see if it moves, if it's not making any crunchy noise, because it's basically like a stepper motor type of thing, right? It just turns a little knob that opens and closes the runner.
Back and forth,
So, all right, man, I appreciate it. I just wanted to validate that because, man, there's no way to get to that plug. And you know what? I think the Dodge guys, the Dodge designers need to stop doing Coke or something. They're just incredible.
I agree.
Buddy, you just on authorization to do, what's the book rate on pulling an R&R and a manifold on a Dodge? What, 2 hours, an hour?
Something like that. Mm-mm.
That's not too bad. It's not like doing the transmission service on that thing. It's 2 days. So.
Right.
But anyway, hey, thanks for your time and have a good one. I appreciate the call.
Sounds good. You bet. You're welcome. Good luck.
I'll let Alan know and he can spread the word.
You got
it. Post it that, hey, you got to pull a manifold to get to that valve and there's no way to test it unless you cut the wire.
1.7 hours labor on our intake manifold or a gasket, I suppose.
What's that? Say that again, please.
It says calls for
one. It's like 2 hours. So, you know what? That's not incredibly bad. And they always are very gracious with their time. And so I'm figuring probably about an hour to get it out and put another one back in if I hustle on it. But that's not bad. It's not going to take me 4 days to get it all out and do everything of that nature. So I'm okay with that. Anyway, I need to order a gasket set, all right, that has the O-rings.
Yep.
And you're not aware of any technical bulletin to replace that manifold because it's a plastic one and they warp or anything of that nature. I got a tech bulletin on Fords that you have to replace the plastic manifold with a different manifold that they offer now, which has got more rigid plastic. There was a recall on it.
Good question. That I don't know, but it looks like there's a PCM, there's a technical service bulletin about a PCM software update that sets a code P2008 that would blow this fuse number 64. Although you're not getting the code, so that PCM, this TSB may not apply. It's, if you want the number, I can give it to you. It's 18021-17.
21-17?
021-021-17.
Let me look that up just in case. Do you see a software version number on what it is and what it should be? Because I can look at my version number and tell you if I need the upgrade or not.
I do not see it. No, it
Yeah.
might
I'll
say
look
it
it up.
on that. If you look up the
Might be on the
TSB, it
bulletin.
might say on that TSB.
See, I was debating whether or not to change out the PCM as well, because you know what, there was somebody who worked on it, broke those lever operated latching diabolical connectors they put on them with the 96. Well, when he obviously the guy must have leaned on it or tried to move it without soaking it in WD first to get all of the debris out of it, and he broke the frame around it. He didn't break the lever, which is normally what I see. He broke the frame around it, and that would require cutting that cable off and reestablishing all of the connections on it by soldering or some sort of other mechanical means of connecting the wires for every single pin on there. And I was thinking to myself, that is just asking for problems, because nothing outside of the factory, there's no depinning tool. I have the block and everything here and all of the wires. And of course, all of the wires with pins on them come in one color. That's it. They're just one color. They're purple. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this. There's no pin removal tool and then repin a new block with a new frame. And there's no way to replace the frame around it. So I broke out the JB weld and some stainless steel wire, because it was the latch on the top that wouldn't let it seat all the way. Even if you push down, and I fixed the lever locking mechanism, it would just push it right back out of, as you're locking it, it's pushing it right back out of the PCM. And of course, when I did remove that cable, obviously it had been loose for a while, and there was a puddle of water in the bottom of that plug on the PCM. And I was like, wow, that might have done some damage. I saw a bit of corrosion on the pins and everything. I cleaned it up as best I could, but I rebuilt that connector, and it now latches, and I can leave it there. I'm just very careful that it doesn't happen again with somebody going in there and trying to meat hook it or something of that nature, because those things are very delicate. And it's a good locking mechanism. You just got to clean it before you try and operate it, because it's got those teeth and gears in there, and they have to slide on those pins. It's just positive connection. And I'm telling you, like I said, I have everything going back. I have Dodge 1500 Rams going back to 2005, and I see all of the changes going up to this 2014. And I don't think I'll probably purchase anything past 2014, because the electronics in there is just crazy, man. It's crazy. Everything in that truck. You get a burnt tail light and the truck won't start. You know? Anyway, good luck, and thank you for being a Dodge mechanic. God bless you. I feel your pain.
Sounds good, my friend. Good luck, and let me know how it goes.
You bet. I will. Thanks. Bye.
You bet. Bye-bye.